Let's start with AI Radar, the segment where we break down the biggest headlines and updates from the world's leading AI players. Think of it as your quick fire pulse on what's hot in AI this week. What do you got for us?
All right, what's hot is something I want on these glasses. That's why I wore them today. I probably won't wear them for the whole episode. But researchers at the University of Washington have developed what they call spatial speech translation, which is an AI system that can simultaneously translate multiple speakers in real time while preserving unique voice characteristics and spatial location. So that to me is pretty awesome. These glasses can already do real-time translation, but really one speaker. And here they're detecting where speakers are, what language, and they can translate different languages from different people into your ears and kind of keeping where they are in space. Not in these products yet, but a research project that I was just like, oh, how awesome does that sound for travel or for I've got in-laws who speak Chinese a lot. And I'm going, well, I see at the dinner table going, what are they talking about? And is it me? And are they saying something nice or not? And that would be so nice to be able to have real-time translation. They don't do Chinese on these glasses yet either, but and multiple speakers would be pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds very cool. And it seemed like also, multiple speakers, and there's an effort to try to sort of like maintain the vibe, so to speak, of each distinct speaker rather than sounding like a robotic translation, which happens with a lot of the technology we have today. They'll actually try to preserve some of the authenticity of that person so that you feel more like you're having an organic conversation, even though there's multiple languages happening.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because the styles are so different across language. I don't know how easy a problem that, like the Spanish, the Italians speak with their hands, and the Spanish are very emotive, and the Japanese less so. And so, like it'll be interesting to see how those vibes, how much that changes the training process from just learning the language to learning how to translate the vibe properly. But certainly a very cool, will open up a world of, I think, exploration for a lot of people if we can have technology like this available.
Yeah, it was so cool. And you mentioned travel, but that would just be absolutely incredible to be able to go anywhere in the world and have a, translation to sort of break down the barriers of how do I get directions and what do I do and how do I thank the person, order from this menu. That would be a really neat thing to be able to unlock for people.
Yeah, so Meta, keep your eye on the University of Washington guys. Figure out when we can put this stuff into our Ray-Ban glasses. What'll be great. Moving on, OpenAI introduced their Health Bench, which is a new benchmark they co-created with 262 physicians, designed to assess how AI models handle medical conversations. They tested them across themes like emergency referrals, global health, and they're showing some of the new models showing a pretty big leap forward here. But I kind of love this coming up with better benchmarks for real world use cases for models, particularly in specific industries like healthcare, because it's just so, I think so many of the models and the benchmarks are just kind of silly. I mean, you see these scores and you're like, oh, it's a bunch of yes, no questions or a bunch of simple answer questions, which isn't real world. And this seems like a nice real world version of that. So happy to see some benchmarks out there that are a little bit different.
Yeah, and also quite robust. Like when I sort of was first started reading about this, I was like, well, it's just kind of like a scorecard. How complex could it really be, or how much forward? But it's like thousands of dimensions that these conversations are being scored against, and so it actually is a pretty meaningful set of data to be able to translate back from the physicians and clinicians that are actually experimenting with this stuff back to training the model. It's pretty rigorous and robust.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, I think that's, you're seeing an evolution of the benchmarks. There's a lot of debate about, how useful benchmarks are. I saw some papers now saying, well, they say that we're going to replace all human engineers in 5 years, but like the benchmarks are all tasks that can take an engineer 5 minutes. And can you do them at 50% accuracy? And you're going, I mean, that's not what the real world is. Tests that you can do on your own with a clear right or wrong answer that take 5 minutes are not a real benchmark for real world performance of what people do. And so moving the state of benchmarks forward so we understand, can these models help us in the real world in the settings we might use them, I think is a pretty valuable activity. Great to see OpenAI hopping out on that.
Agreed.
All right. Next up, Google significantly expanding its Gemini AI assistant with plans to integrate it across a broad range of Android powered devices, which of course isn't just phones, it's smartwatches, TVs, cars, augmented reality headsets. And over the next few months, Gemini will be rolling out to Wear OS watches, enabling you to have natural voice commands, coming to Google TV later this year, um, allowing personalized content recommendations, and coming to Android Auto, where you'll be able to, talk to your car using. I think we've all had the experience of using voice recognition in the car. Got a Tesla and it's like, man, if you know the four commands that it knows, it's pretty good. But if you want to say anything anyway other than the exact wording of those four commands, it doesn't really work. So hopefully, getting a little bit smarter in a whole range of devices, which is easy to think of Android as the alternative to the iPhone, but you forget that it's powering watches and TVs and cars and augmented reality headsets and a whole bunch of stuff. So pretty exciting to see Google at least rolling Gemini out everywhere now. If they can just make the Gemini products better, maybe they'll win me back over.
Yeah, I agreed. Some of these things when I was thinking like, okay, Gemini in your TV and Gemini in your, smartwatch and all this type of stuff. Like, do we really need Gemini all these places? But actually, when you think about it, if it works well, it'll be a somewhat delightful experience. You can imagine like you're cooking dinner, and rather than having to open up your recipe on your phone right next to you, you can just ask your watch, like, what's the next thing I need to put in here? Or what is give it some simple commands and it's sort of connected. Or how many times, I don't know if you do this, but I am constantly just like, I'll see something on TV, and I'm like, "Who is that actor, and what do I know them from?" And I'm trying to, like, search my brain, and I pull up my phone or my computer because it is, bothering me until I can get the answer, but having it all right there integrated in sort of one source, it's just sort of like again, just makes it more of a sort of a delightful experience rather than pulling out multiple devices to try to answer whatever you're curious about, having it all integrated in one spot. It actually would be pretty cool, but again, only if it works well, so we'll see.
I had this exact experience where I was, trying to figure out where can I watch this show? And you're searching, am I going to use the Samsung TV's built-in app that searches across apps, or do I go to the Apple TV app inside the smart Samsung, or do I do the Apple TV device? Like what? I want to be able to go. I just want to watch this show. Um, pull it up. And the other point that you make that I think is really interesting is the moving from, hey, what's the recipe for X to, hey, I've added the eggs and the milk. How much flour do I need in this recipe? Where you can actually have it understand, look at the recipe and answer a direct question as opposed to, oh, pull that up, send it to my phone, let me read through to the, page 2 to figure out what it is I need to do next. That's a really useful interaction model. If you can bring it to more devices, I think very powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're going to keep up with the Google theme, moving away from Gemini though to DeepMind. And they debuted Alpha Evolve, which is a Gemini powered, but a coding agent tackling scientific and algorithmic challenges. It uses two model systems. This was really interesting. It uses Gemini Flash for idea generation and Gemini Pro, so the kind of larger model for refinement, to iteratively craft and evolve advanced algorithms. And they've used this in a couple of ways. They use it to improve on what's called Strasson's multiplication method, optimize something that's been around for over 100 years. They're, also looking at how do they improve AI training, eking efficiency out of Google's global AI training, their chip design, their data center scheduling and cooling. So doing a lot of really interesting things to develop algorithms. But I thought this kind of two model system, not just here's Gemini Pro, go use it, but how do we develop a system on top of these that's specifically targeted designing algorithms was an interesting evolution there.
Yeah, for sure. And also, this is not to do with the AI, but optimizing on math from 100 years ago. It's been around for 100 years. It's like pretty kind of cool to think about.
Yeah, just send me out after old school problems and find better solutions. And the number of things that are that way that you don't think about it that we've built up and haven't thought about for 50 years because we developed them and they worked. And is there a better way? Well, nobody's really thought about it. There's more of those in the world than you think. So I'll be curious to see who uses this and where it's applied. This Alpha Evolve system.
For sure.